Please be seated. Shabbat Shalom. Shana Tova. What makes someone Jewish? Is it a state of being? Is it an identity? Or is it a practice? To call yourself a singer, singing would have to be on the calendar quite a bit. To call yourself a writer, writing would have to be on your schedule. How about to call yourself Jewish? What, if anything, do you have to do? This has been a source of debate now for a few centuries, but for most of Jewish history, this was never top of mind. See, especially in Europe, Jewish people lived in shtetls, in little towns, secluded from their neighbors and the outside world. Think of Anatevka from Fiddler on the Roof. Jewish people had their Jewish practice and their identity so woven into the very fiber of their being that it really never came to mind. But all of that changed in the 1700s with the rise of Enlightenment thinking. All of a sudden, Jewish people had an invitation from the nations that surrounded them. Christian Europe lent a hand and extended citizenship to the Jews of their lands. And Jewish people responded in all kinds of ways. On the one hand, you had Jewish people who said, no thank you, no, not for me. Because as soon as I join the society that surrounds me, well, forget about it, I'll lose my Jewish identity, I'll lose my practice. And so those folks decided that they would dress the same, pray the same, eat the same way as they always had. And it was those people that gave rise to what we know today as Orthodox Judaism. On the other hand, you had Jews who said, yes, finally, this is my shot. I'm out of here. I'm done with the shtetl. And they wiped their hands clean of their Jewish identity and roots altogether. Many Jews during this period converted to Christianity, and they did so to gain full access to Christian Europe. But in between these two extremes, you find us, people who embarked on an incredible project to meld Judaism with modernity. Tonight, I want to highlight two movements that embarked on this project. The first is us, the Reform movement, a movement that tried its best to mold the Jewish religion to the times and places in which they were living. And the other is Zionism, a movement that sought and succeeded to build a Jewish state, a state where Jewish people could be fully modern and also fully Jewish, a state that would have a seat at the table with the community of nations. Both of these movements, to this day, are struggling with this question. Is Judaism a practice or an identity? In Israel, they ask this question all the time. There is now a speed rail that can get you from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and back in record time. Can it run on Shabbat? How about a baker in Israel who loves to bake his bread every single day? Can he bake his bread on Passover? Can he sell it? Are people allowed to buy it? The Jewish state has to ask a very important question. How much Jewish observance, how much Jewish practice is necessary in order to maintain the Jewishness, the Jewish character of the state of Israel? We as a movement and as Reform and also American Jews, we're asking the same thing. How often should we come to synagogue? What, if anything, do we have to do at home in order to build up our Jewish identity? Is Judaism an identity or a practice? There is a rising voice in both contexts, in both places, that say Jewish practice is completely unnecessary, disconnected from my identity as a Jew. In Israel, we see Jews who are Chiloni Jews, secular Jews, Jewish people who identify absolutely as Jewish, absolutely as Israeli, but say they have no need for Jewish practice. In fact, Chiloni Jews, many, don't even come to services on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. They are fully Jewish, but they don't practice. Here in this country, there is a rising voice within the Reform movement and in American Judaism in general that says that it's an identity. Either I've converted into the religion or I've been born into the religion, but either way, it's who I am, it's how I identify, it's not what I do. A Pew study of American Jews in 2020 said that 27% of Jewish people are in a category that they developed called Jews of no religion. Jewish people who identify as Jewish but don't have the religious aspects tied to it. This rising voice is growing and growing, and I need to highlight for you just how differently that voice is heard in different places. Consider the average secular Israeli. They speak Hebrew as their first language. They live on the Jewish calendar, and on top of that, in their public schools, they're studying Jewish text and Torah because, after all, they live in a Jewish state. I have a colleague who once challenged me, go find the most secular of secular Israelis that you know, and offer them the following. Hey, listen, I've got a reservation at the hottest new restaurant in Tel Aviv. 7 p.m. Friday night. Can you join me? It's likely that the most secular of secular Israelis, Jewish Israelis, will say to you, are you kidding me? My mother would kill me. I got to be home for Shabbat dinner. Even if secular Israelis don't utter one prayer, even if they don't light Shabbat candles, they are living on the rhythms of Jewish time, in a Jewish culture, in a Jewish country. And so for that reason, they absolutely are living out Judaism in their own way. Compare this with us here in the United States. For most of us, our first language is English. We have a separation of religion and state here, so our way of studying text can't be in public school, and our Friday night lights, they are not the Shabbat candles, they are the light bulbs that illuminate our high school football fields. That's the culture that we are living in. It is a unique challenge. So, what is the magic Jewish practice? How much Jewish practice, what number, what quantity is necessary to unlock our Jewish identity? It's not a number. And I don't believe it's a kind of practice either. It is rather a feeling. Think about a time when you once aced an exam. Think about a time when you once presented to your biggest client and you nailed it. I bet you were nervous beforehand. I bet you practiced a lot. And I would imagine that when you were there doing what you were doing, you probably stood a little bit taller. You probably felt good because you knew who you were and you knew what it is you were doing. That is the feeling that I want for each and every one of you when you consider your Jewish identity. I want you to feel proud. I want you to feel that you know what it is you're doing, and I believe that one way to get there is through Jewish practice. I'm worried because in the religiously progressive world and in the Reform movement, there are folks who are less confident. There are folks that say to me, well, you know, Rabbi, we're Jew-ish. No. You are Jewish. To be a Reformed Jew, to be a religiously progressive Jew, is to be the author of your Jewish story. That's what we need to do. We need to chart our own path. We need to join and be proud of a project that has been happening now for centuries, of figuring out how to make Judaism relevant and vibrant and beautiful in our lives, in our times, here and now. That's what it means to be a Reformed Jew. I wish I could tell you that this sermon tonight is all about your personal Jewish journey and your spiritual practice, but it's not. Because the threats to the Jewish people are not just from within, they are from without as well. We are living in a time of rising anti-Semitism, and one of the hotbeds of anti-Semitism is the college campus. I read an article this summer about Micah Gritz, a senior at Tufts University, who told a reporter that he had to constantly evaluate where he felt safe as a Jew on campus. That same article talked about Tessa Wexler, a senior at the University of California, Santa Barbara. She said that in the span of 48 hours, she encountered 2 anti-Semitic events. First, she walked into her political science classroom, took a look at the board, and saw an anti-Israel slur scrawled across it. Less than 2 days later, she opens up her mailbox, she pulls out a pamphlet. It's a pamphlet denying that the Holocaust ever happened. Our Jewish college and high school students, they are angry, they are concerned, they are frustrated, and they're also a bit confused. I have had Jewish high school and college students ask me this year, Rabbi, I heard this term Zionism on campus. I know it has something to do with Israel, but what is Zionism? What exactly is it? I've had Jewish high school and college students ask me, Rabbi, I grew up at a Reformed congregation, and I loved it. I'm a Reformed Jew, but what does that really mean? How am I different than my friend who grew up at the conservative synagogue down the road? Our college and high school students need to be ready to combat anti-Semitism. All of us, this community, needs to be ready. And I believe that we can get there through Jewish practice. I know this not just from the Jewish world. Rather, I know this because it is a lesson that is taught in every walk of life, including the football field. In 2006, Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday of the Indianapolis Colts did a drill called the wet football drills, and the drill is exactly as it sounds. Jeff Saturday, the center of the team, would get ready to snap the football to Peyton Manning standing behind him. And just before he did, an equipment manager would come over with a bottle of water and douse the football with water, make it soaking wet so that they could practice. Understandably, Jeff Saturday hated this drill. His arms, his legs, his shirt, his pants, soaked. He had to get changed every time after he was done. He hated the drill so much that one time during the season, he said to Peyton Manning, hey, Peyton, you know, we're playing at home this week in the RCA Dome. You think we can skip the wet football drills? Manning famously responded to Saturday, sorry, Jeff, there might be a leak in the dome. We got to keep doing the drill. So they kept doing the drill. And they played so well that year that the Colts played their way to Super Bowl 41. And in the clear, sunny skies of Miami, Florida, where that Super Bowl was hosted, Jeff Saturday and Peyton Manning went out every day and did the wet football drills. They practiced and practiced. And then game day came. And it poured. It poured so much that the Chicago Bears, their opponents, fumbled 2 snaps that night. Manning and Saturday fumbled 0. Some of you may remember the Colts went on to win Super Bowl 41. That's the power of practice. That is the power of having confidence, of knowing what you do, of knowing who you are and why you are there. And so no matter what challenge comes your way, you'll be ready. Because challenges are going to come to the Jewish community, and especially to the religiously progressive Jewish community, when we expect it least. It's when someone casually says at the water cooler at work, you know, it's really the Jews that control the banks and the media. It's at a Hillel somewhere where someone says, whoa, your dad's Jewish, but your mom is not? You're not really Jewish. It's when someone from across the street says, oh, you're heading over to Beth Or for high holidays. Ah, enjoy. You Reform Jews are so lucky. You don't have to do anything. What will you do? Will you be able to stand tall? Will you be able to stand proud and say, no, that's not how it is in every Jewish community? That you are fully Jewish, that you are fully a Reform, religiously progressive, you are fully a Jewish person because you belong here. That is what practice can do for us. That is what we need. And it is this place that gives me hope. It is this place and this community that alleviates my worry. Here in America, this country and the Jewish people within it have experienced mostly sunny skies. This place for centuries was called the Goldene Medina, Yiddish for the Golden Country. There were actually rumors in Eastern Europe amongst Jewish people that the streets of America were paved with gold. But the rain is coming. The Anti-Defamation League reported that in 2022, they counted more anti-Semitic incidents than ever before, since they started publishing in 1979 and since they began counting as an organization. And we don't need to look to national statistics. I've heard it from, unfortunately, this community. People who have endured anti-Semitic comments. People and children as young as elementary school. Let me repeat that. Children as young as elementary school experiencing anti-Semitism. Exclusion from their groups and their friend groups, whether that be online or in person, enduring nasty comments. Why? Because they're Jewish. The storm is coming. The rain is here. But we have a lighthouse. Congregation Beth Or, Beit Or, House of Light. This is where we come to find our practice. This is where we come to remind ourselves of who we are. Coming to Shabbat services, coming to Torah study, learning Hebrew, learning the Hebrew prayers. These are the wet football drills of the Jewish people. Ask any single one of our religious school students, and they will tell you it is not always fun. In fact, it is a challenge, but it's necessary. It's necessary because it builds our confidence. It tells us this is who we are. I am so inspired by all of you because you are doing Judaism. You're doing it right now. And we need to continue to search for Jewish practice and build that consistency so that the light from here shines forth, not just in this community where I know it does so beautifully, but for all the way to as far as the eye can see. I know we can do it. And it is this place that alleviates my worry. It is you that gives me confidence in the future. Despite the statistics, despite what I've told you about the rise of anti-Semitism, I still believe that this is, by far, the most successful, the most free diaspora Jewish community of all time. Pick a time and a place where Jews lived, and they would marvel at the freedoms and the wonderful opportunity we have. And ironically, that makes it hard for this, to find time for Jewish practice. I am fully aware that we are a movement predicated on the fact that me, the rabbi, does not get to tell you, the congregation, what to do, how to practice, or when to practice, and that inspires me. It inspires me because I have confidence in you that you will find your thing. Maybe you'll be like me and you'll listen to Israeli pop music, something many of you know I love. Maybe it will be reading a book about a Jewish leader. Maybe it'll be something I never thought of. But it matters less to me what you do and more to me that you do something. Do something to make and sustain this Jewish place, the American Jewish community, the American religiously liberal Jewish community. We have had unprecedented freedoms in this country, and I know that ironically it makes it so hard to find time for Jewish practice. So tonight I want to conclude with a story not from a time of abundant freedom, not from a time where there were so many things to choose from, but instead from a time where there was no freedom, a time when there was no choice. I was a rabbinical student leading a discussion on Hanukkah, and I asked people sitting around the table to share their most memorable Hanukkah experience. Some people talked about exotic places where they went, and they took their Hanukkah menorah with them. Other folks talked about lighting candles with the wonderful people they shared the room with. And then we got to a woman in her 90s. My most memorable Hanukkah, she said with a bit of a Yiddish accent. It wasn't my happiest. I'm a survivor, you know. It was in the camps. And we knew that Hanukkah was coming, so we took potatoes and we took the part that no one could eat. We cut off the rotten parts and we hollowed it out. Then we had someone smuggle in some oil from outside of the camp. We found anything that could burn in the camp, and we turned them into little wicks, and we placed the wick inside the hollowed out potato with oil. And when Hanukkah came, we lit the Chanukiah, the makeshift Hanukkah menorah. We said the brachas, the blessings. That was my most memorable Hanukkah. Silence fell over the room. Until finally someone said, "Where in the world did you find the strength? Where in the world did you find the courage to do something like that?" The woman smiled and said, "Oh, Hanukkah was coming, and we were Jews, so we had to do something. We were Jews. We had to do something." Shabbat Shalom. Shana Tova.